I want you to just for a second picture this. You're in a chair, tilted back, mouth open.
Yeah.
And you hear that sound, that high-pitched whine that just makes your entire body tense up.
The dentist's drill. It's a universal sound of dread.
Exactly. It's a modern sound, right? Think of sterile rooms, bright lights, maybe some bad music playing. But I want you to take that image and just strip all of that away.
Okay.
No electricity. The chair is probably just a mat on a mud floor. And you turn the clock back. Not 100 years, not even 1,000. We're going back 9,000 years.
It's a jarring thought. You're in a settlement called Mehrgarh in what's now Pakistan, and you have a toothache, probably an agonizing one. But there's someone there, a specialist, who is leaning over you with a tool made of flint attached to a little bow.
And they are drilling into your tooth.
Yeah.
To me, that is the single image that completely rewires my brain about so-called primitive people. This isn't just smashing a rock against another rock. This is surgery.
It's precision surgery, and that's what's so stunning. When scientists looked at these drilled teeth under a microscope, the precision was on a micrometer scale. It implies a deep, deep understanding of mechanics, of anatomy.
It just completely shatters that whole cartoon image of cavemen, doesn't it?
It does. It throws it right out the window. And that's really our mission for today's deep dive, isn't it? We're not just memorizing dates and names of stone tools. We're trying to track the evolution of the human mind on the Indian subcontinent.
Right. And the timeline is, well, it's intimidating. We're talking about a story that starts maybe 3.3 million years ago, and we're going to try to get all the way up to the Iron Age, around 1000 BC.
It's a huge canvas. We're essentially tracing the journey from being hunter-gatherers, from being just another species on the landscape, to becoming, well, engineers, artists, and even dentists.
Okay, so before we jump into the deep end with the quartzite men, we need to get some terminology straight, because you hear these words thrown around: prehistory, proto-history, history. It sounds a bit like academic jargon, but the difference is actually really important for understanding what we're looking at, isn't it?
It's fundamental, yeah. Think of it like a radio signal coming from the past. Prehistory is the period with the most static. There's no writing at all.
Zero.
Nothing. So all we have are the physical objects people left behind. Stone tools, bones, bits of charcoal from their fires, broken pottery. We are, for all intents and purposes, detectives at a crime scene with only physical evidence. No witnesses. This covers the vast, vast majority of human existence, the Stone Ages.
Okay, so prehistory is silent. What's proto-history then? That sounds like it's almost history.
It's this fascinating gray area. Proto-history is when writing exists, but there's a catch. Either, one, we can't read it, like the script of the Indus Valley civilization. We have thousands of seals with this beautiful script, but no one has cracked the code.
So it's like having a library full of books in a language no one speaks?
Exactly. Or the second possibility is a society that had incredibly rich oral traditions that just weren't written down until much, much later.
Like the Vedic period.
Precisely. The Vedic civilization from about 1500 BC composed these massive, complex texts called the Vedas, but they were passed down perfectly, word for word, from teacher to student for centuries, maybe 1,000 years, before anyone wrote them down. So archaeologically, it looks prehistoric, but we know this incredible literature was just in the air. That's proto-history.
And then history proper is when the lights come on. We have written records we can read, Ashoka's edicts carved on pillars, coins with kings' names, accounts from Greek travelers. We can start to cross-reference our sources.
Right. But for today, we're mostly in that pre- and proto-historic twilight. And the reason to care, the so what of it all, is that this is the story of how everything we call civilization in South Asia began. It's the ultimate survival story.
Let's start at page 1 then. The Paleolithic era, the Old Stone Age. The timescale here is just, it's hard to get your head around. Starting 3.3 million years ago and running all the way to about 10,000 BC.
It makes everything else, the pyramids, Rome, all of it look like it happened yesterday afternoon. And the nickname that you sometimes see for the people of this era is the Quartzite Men.
It sounds like a superhero team or a villain. But the name comes from the rock they used, right?
It does. See, in Europe, the go-to material for stone tools was flint. It's predictable. You hit it one way, it flakes off in a nice sharp piece. But good flint is kind of rare in many parts of India. What India has tons of is quartzite.
And quartzite is tough. I mean, it's a metamorphic rock. It's been cooked and squeezed inside the earth. It does not want to break.
It absolutely does not. The skill, the sheer force required to shape a tool out of quartzite is on another level compared to flint. So the fact that these early humans mastered this difficult local material tells you a lot about their intelligence and their adaptability. They were problem solvers from day one.
Now, when we say early humans here, for most of this period, we're not even talking about Homo sapiens like us. We're looking at our ancestors. Which brings us to a really big name in Indian archaeology, the Narmada Man.
The Narmada Man is really the anchor. For decades, India was this frustrating blank spot. We found millions of stone tools, but we had no idea who was making them. No fossils.
The tools, but not the tool maker.
Exactly. And then, in 1982, a geologist, Arun Sanakia, was walking along the Narmada River in Madhya Pradesh at a place called Hathnora, and he spotted something.
Finding a hominin fossil in a riverbed has to be one of the luckiest finds imaginable.
It's beyond a needle in a haystack. He found a fossilized skull cap, just the top of a cranium, and it was old, really old. This was the first direct evidence of a hominin in the entire subcontinent. It was a sensation.
So who was he, or she? Was it Homo erectus?
That's the million-dollar question. The initial classification was Homo erectus. And that fits, you know. Homo erectus was the great traveler, the first hominin species to leave Africa and spread across the world. They were tall, they walked fully upright, controlled fire.
But the story's gotten a bit more complicated, hasn't it?
It has. More recent studies of the skull suggest it might be something a bit more advanced. The brain capacity is quite large, over 1,200 cubic centimeters, which is pushing up towards the range of archaic Homo sapiens.
So not quite us, but maybe on the way to becoming us.
Potentially. It suggests that India wasn't just a place hominins passed through. It was a place where they lived for hundreds of thousands of years, evolving, adapting, a laboratory of human evolution in its own right.
And we can see that evolution, that growing brain power, reflected in their toolkit. It wasn't just one kind of stone tool for 2 million years. It changed.
Dramatically. We break the Paleolithic into 3 stages based on this. The lower Paleolithic is the age of the big, heavy-duty tools. And in India, you actually get 2 different traditions, which is fascinating. In the northwest, in the Son River Valley, you find what's called the Sohanian culture. They made choppers. Basically, you take a round river pebble and you knock a few flakes off one end to make a sharp, jagged edge. Simple. Brutally effective.
For chopping wood or maybe breaking open bones for marrow.
Exactly. But then, in most of central and southern India, you find a different, more sophisticated technology, the Acheulean, and their signature tool is the hand axe.
I've seen these in museums. They can be beautiful. They're sort of teardrop-shaped, symmetrical on both sides.
That symmetry is everything. To make a chopper, you just need to know how to break a rock. To make an Acheulean hand axe, you need a mental template. You have to see the final shape inside the raw block of stone and then systematically chip away everything that isn't the axe.
It's the difference between doodling and sculpting.
That's a perfect analogy. It shows abstract thought, planning. And these hand axes were the Swiss Army knife of their day, digging for roots, butchering animals, scraping hides. They were the ultimate multi-tool.
Okay, so that's the lower Paleolithic, big hand axes. Then things start to get smaller in the middle Paleolithic.
They do. This is the big technological shift to flake tools. Instead of using the core of the stone as your main tool, you'd carefully prepare the core first, and then, with one precise strike, you'd knock off a flake that was pre-shaped. The flake itself was the tool, a ready-made knife or scraper.
That sounds way more efficient.
It is. From one chunk of rock, you can now get multiple tools instead of just one. You get more cutting edge for your effort.
Now, in Europe, this kind of flake technology is the calling card of the Neanderthals. So, did we have Neanderthals in India?
Ah, one of the great mysteries. The tools we find in the Indian Middle Paleolithic look very similar to the Mousterian tools made by Neanderthals in Europe and the Middle East. And geographically, it makes sense. We know they were in Central Asia. It's not a huge leap to imagine them coming down into the subcontinent.
But
we have never found a single Neanderthal fossil in India. Not one bone.
So we have the fingerprints all over the crime scene, but no suspect.
That's it, exactly. So who is making them? Was it the descendants of Narmada Man developing the same technology in parallel? Were there Neanderthals here whose bones we just haven't found yet? Or was it another group entirely, like the Denisovans? We just don't have the answer yet.
Okay, so then we hit the final stretch, the Upper Paleolithic. This starts around 40,000 years ago, and now we're pretty sure Homo sapiens, people like us, are on the scene.
Yes. And the toolkit gets even more refined. You see long, elegant blades being struck off cores. And for the first time, we see a lot of tools being made out of bone. Harpoons, needles, awls. But really, the biggest innovation of the Upper Paleolithic isn't about new ways to get food. It's about something else entirely.
It's about art and meaning.
It's about the birth of the symbolic mind. And one of the most surprising pieces of evidence for this comes from ostrich eggshells.
It blew my mind when I read it. There were ostriches in India.
There were big flocks of them roaming around what is now Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh. They're extinct now, of course. But at sites like Patna, archaeologists have found fragments of these thick ostrich eggshells dated to around 25,000 years ago.
And they weren't just broken shells from a meal.
No. Some of them have been intentionally engraved with designs, cross-hatching, geometric patterns. Some were even shaped into beads for a necklace.
Think about that for a second. An ostrich eggshell is food. It's a canteen for water. But to sit there and carefully scratch a pattern onto it, that has no practical survival function. It's purely for decoration. Or maybe it held some meaning we've lost.
It's a classic sign of modern human behavior. We don't just use the world, we interpret it, we create symbols. And that leads us to maybe the most profound site from this period, Baghor in Uttar Pradesh.
Okay, what was found at Baghor?
In the middle of a settlement area, the archaeologists found a circular platform made of rubble. And in the very center of that circle was a natural, triangular piece of sandstone. It was just sitting there, placed on the platform.
To a skeptic, that sounds like a pile of rocks.
It could be. But here is the amazing part. There are tribal groups, the Kols and the Begas, who live in that same area today. And their central object of worship for the mother goddess, the Devi, is often a natural, uncarved, triangular stone.
No way.
And they build small, circular platforms, just like the one at Baghor, to place it on. The excavators actually brought some of the local villagers to the site, and they immediately identified it. They said, that's a shrine.
So you're suggesting a potential continuity of a religious belief, a ritual practice, spanning 20,000 years.
The resemblance is uncanny. It's not definitive proof, but it's powerfully suggestive. We could be looking at one of the oldest active religious traditions in the world. It gives you vertigo just thinking about it.
It really does. And this artistic, symbolic explosion carries on into the famous rock shelters like Bhimbetka.
Bhimbetka is the Louvre of the Stone Age. It has hundreds of caves with paintings layered on top of each other for thousands of years. Some of the oldest ones, these large green figures of dancers and animals, might well date back to this Upper Paleolithic period. It's a library of human consciousness written on stone.
Which is a perfect transition to the next chapter. Because after the long, slow grind of the Paleolithic, the world itself suddenly changes. Around 10,000 BC, the Ice Age ends.
It's a complete environmental revolution. The great glaciers in the north melt. Global temperatures rise. And critically for India, the monsoon cycle that we know today gets established. It becomes warmer and wetter.
So what was once dry, open grassland starts to turn into forest.
Dense, deciduous forest, the whole ecosystem changes. And if you're a hunter, that means your dinner menu changes too.
Right. The big, slow Ice Age animals like mammoths and giant bison are gone. Now you're hunting smaller, quicker animals. Deer, gazelles, wild boar, birds.
And you can't hunt a fleet-footed deer with a big, heavy 2-kilo hand axe. By the time you wind up to throw it, the deer's in the next valley. You need a new kind of weapon.
You need projectile technology.
You need speed and range. And this is the great technological innovation of the Mesolithic, or the Middle Stone Age. The microliths.
As the name implies, micro, they're tiny.
They're incredibly small. Some are no bigger than your pinky fingernail. They come in precise geometric shapes, triangles, crescents, trapezoids.
But on its own, a tiny stone triangle isn't much of a weapon, so how are they using them?
They were composite tools, that's the key. They would take a piece of wood or bone, carve a groove in it, and then set a series of these sharp little microliths into the groove, held in place with natural glue, like tree resin.
So you're creating a serrated edge, like a saw blade.
Exactly. Or you could mount one at the tip of a reed shaft to make an arrow, or several along the side to make a barbed harpoon. It was a modular weapon system.
That's brilliant. It's like Lego for hunting tools. If one little piece breaks, you don't have to make a whole new spear. You just pop out the broken bit and stick a new one in.
It was a revolutionary technology, and it was incredibly successful. We find Mesolithic sites with microliths all across the Indian subcontinent, from the coast of Tamil Nadu to the foothills of the Himalayas. The population seems to have exploded during this period.
And with more people, and maybe a slightly more settled lifestyle, you start to see more complex social behavior. The burials from this period are they're so human.
They really are. For the first time, we see formal cemeteries. At a site like Mahadaha in the Ganges Valley, we find people being buried within the settlement. They weren't being discarded, they were being kept close to the living.
And they're these double burials. A man and a woman laid in the same grave.
Yes, sometimes facing each other, which raises so many questions. Were they a couple who died together? Was it a form of ritual sacrifice? We can only speculate, but what's undeniable is the care that was taken.
And they were buried with things. Grave goods.
Yes. They're being sent into the afterlife with provisions. We find tools, animal bones, and ornaments. In the grave, an individual was found wearing earrings and a necklace made of carved antler.
Jewelry. That says so much. It says you have leisure time. You have enough food that you can afford to spend hours making something that is purely decorative. It's about status and identity.
It absolutely is. And the rock art from Bhimbetka during the Mesolithic period just bursts with this new social complexity. The walls are covered in these dynamic red-painted scenes.
Like a documentary of their lives.
It is. You see huge hunting parties with bows and arrows surrounding an animal. You see people fishing with nets and traps. You see women with baskets gathering food. And you see dancing, long lines of people holding hands, moving in rhythm.
There's that one famous image of a mother and child. It's so simple, just a few lines, but it's instantly recognizable.
It connects you across 10,000 years. It's a powerful reminder that these weren't just Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. They were people. They celebrated, they grieved, they loved their children.
And towards the very end of this period, we start to see the first hints of the next great change. They start experimenting with animals.
That's right. At sites like Adamgarh in Madhya Pradesh, we find the bones of sheep, goats, and cattle. And when zooarchaeologists study them, they see changes in the bone structure that suggest they are no longer fully wild. They are being managed, herded.
It's not full-on farming yet, but they're dipping their toes in the water.
They're starting to control their food source, not just find it, which sets the stage for the single biggest transformation in human history.
The Neolithic Revolution, the New Stone Age. This is where we go from finding food to making it.
It is the great paradigm shift. And for South Asia, the story really begins at that site we mentioned at the very start, Mehrgarh.
Right, back to our dentist. Mehrgarh is in a really strategic spot at the base of the Bolan Pass.
It's the gateway between the Iranian Plateau and the Indus Plains. And as early as 7000 BC, the people there were living in permanent, multi-roomed houses made of mud brick. They had storage silos for grain.
And they were growing food.
They were cultivating barley and wheat. They were some of the earliest farmers in the world. And this shift in diet had consequences.
Which brings us back to the teeth. You get cavities from eating carbs and from the grit of the grinding stones getting into your flour.
It was a public health crisis. And the dentistry at Mehrgarh seems to be a direct response to that crisis created by their own success as farmers.
So civilization gave us bread, but it also gave us the toothache.
It's the classic story of progress. Every solution creates a new problem. But the really important thing to understand is that the Neolithic wasn't a single event. It happened differently all over India. Mehrgarh is just one version.
Okay, so if we leave the wheat farmers of Mehrgarh and travel way up north into Kashmir to a site called Burzahom, life looks totally different.
Completely. The people of Burzahom were the pit dwellers. It gets cold in Kashmir in the winter, so to stay warm, they didn't build houses up, they dug them down. They excavated these circular or oval pits, wider at the base and narrower at the top.
Almost like a subterranean bottle.
Yes, to trap the heat. And we find post holes around the rim, which suggests they had a conical roof of thatch or birch bark over the top. It's a brilliant adaptation to a cold climate.
And Burzahom has its own strange and wonderful stories. There's a burial of a dog.
Yes, a wild dog buried in a pit with its owner. And in another case, a dog buried with a set of antlers placed over it. It suggests a very special relationship, maybe a hunting partner or a creature with spiritual significance.
And they also have evidence of another kind of surgery. Not dentistry, but brain surgery.
Trepanning. We have found human skulls from Burzahom with holes intentionally drilled into them. And the bone around the hole shows signs of healing, which means the person survived the operation and lived for some time afterwards.
Why would they do that?
We can only guess. Maybe to relieve pressure from a head injury, maybe for ritual reasons to release evil spirits. But whatever the reason, it shows an incredible level of surgical skill and anatomical knowledge.
Okay, so we have pit-dwelling brain surgeons in the north. What about if we go to South India? What does the Neolithic look like there?
In the south, in places like Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh, the Neolithic is all about one animal, cattle. These were pastoralist communities. Their entire world revolved around their herds. And they left behind one of the most mysterious archaeological features in India, the ash mounds.
I've seen pictures of these, sites like Utnir. They're just huge, sprawling mounds of ash.
They are. What seems to have happened is that these communities, who often lived on granite hilltops, would pen their cattle in large enclosures. And over time, a massive amount of cow dung would accumulate.
Right.
And then, periodically, they would set the whole thing on fire. And we're not talking a small bonfire. These were colossal fires that burned so hot they actually vitrified the dung, turning it into a glassy, slag-like material.
Why on earth would you do that? Dung is valuable. It's fuel. It's fertilizer. Why burn it on such a massive scale?
It's a huge puzzle. It seems wasteful. The most plausible theory is that it was ritual. A great ceremonial cleansing, maybe tied to the seasons or a festival, celebrating the wealth and fertility that came from their cattle. For them, cattle were everything.
And we can't forget the East. In the Ganges Valley, they were focused on a different plant altogether.
Rice. For a long time, it was thought that rice farming spread to India from China. But sites like Lahore Deva have pushed the date for rice cultivation in the Ganges Plain back to around 6500 BC. This suggests it may have been an independent center of domestication. They figured it out for themselves.
So there's no one single Neolithic package. It's a whole mosaic of different adaptations. Wheat in the west, pits in the north, cattle in the south, rice in the east.
Exactly. It was a diverse and dynamic period. But eventually people started looking for a material that was better than stone, and that's when things get metallic.
The Chalcolithic, the Copper Stone Age.
Yes, a period from about 2600 to 1200 BC where people are using copper tools alongside their traditional stone ones. It's a transitional phase, and it overlaps with the Great Harappan civilization. While Mohenjo-Daro was a bustling metropolis, most of the rest of India was dotted with these smaller Chalcolithic farming villages.
And life in those villages wasn't necessarily easy, was it? You mentioned the health data is pretty grim.
It is. When we look at the human skeletons from Chalcolithic sites, especially in places like Western Maharashtra, we see a lot of stress, very high infant mortality. We see evidence of malnutrition and disease etched into their teeth and bones.
Wait, I thought the whole point of farming was to have more food and a better life.
It's a paradox. You have more calories, yes, but you have much less variety in your diet. Instead of eating 100 different wild plants and animals, now you're eating wheat and maybe some lentils. If your one crop fails because of a drought, you starve.
And you're living in crowded villages with your animals and their waste. It's a breeding ground for germs.
Precisely. So in some ways, the adoption of agriculture led to a decline in individual health, but it allowed for larger populations. And with those larger populations and the ability to store grain, something else appears for the first time in human history.
Social inequality.
Yes. In a hunter-gatherer band, everyone is more or less equal because you can't accumulate possessions. But in a village, you can have a bigger house, a bigger field, more grain in your silo, and you can pass that wealth on to your children.
And we see this in the graves.
Very clearly. At sites like Navassa, we find child burials. Some children are buried with absolutely nothing. Others, who are too young to have earned it themselves, are buried with beautiful painted pots and necklaces of copper beads. That's inherited status. The division between rich and poor had begun.
And we also see a new focus on weapons, the so-called copper hoards.
Yes, primarily in the Ganges Plain. Archaeologists find these caches, these hoards, of dozens of copper objects buried together, and they include huge, heavy harpoons with vicious barbs, long antenna-hilted swords, and these strange human-shaped figures.
Are they practical weapons or something else?
It's debated. Some are so large and heavy they seem unwieldy. There might have been symbols of power, prestige objects for a chief, or maybe even a form of currency, but they definitely point to a more competitive, more violent society.
And that trend only accelerates when a new, much harder metal arrives on the scene.
The Iron Age. Around 1000 BC, iron technology spreads across India, and it is a game changer. Copper is soft. You can't really cut down a dense forest with a copper axe. But with a hard iron axe, you can. You can clear the jungle of the Gangetic Plain. With an iron plow, you can till heavy soil.
And this leads to a population boom in the north, the growth of cities, the second urbanization that we associate with the Vedic period. But while all that is happening in the north, the south is doing something completely different and visually spectacular.
Megaliths.
Big stones.
Yes. From around 1000 BC, people all across South India start building these monumental tombs out of massive stones. It's an incredible feat of engineering and social organization.
So what do they look like? It wasn't just one type of tomb, was it?
No, there's a whole variety. You have dolmens, which look like giant stone tables, 3 or 4 huge upright slabs with a massive capstone, sometimes weighing many tons, placed on top. You have cists, which are underground box graves made of stone slabs, sometimes with a little circular porthole in one side.
A porthole? For what?
Maybe to put in later offerings, or maybe it was seen as a doorway for the soul. Then you have urn burials, where the bones were placed in a huge terracotta pot and buried. And you have menhirs, just single, towering standing stones erected as memorials.
And inside these elaborate tombs, what do we find?
We find iron, a lot of iron. Unlike the Chalcolithic, where metal was still rare, these megalithic people buried their dead fully armed for the afterlife. We find iron swords, daggers, spearheads, arrowheads, even horse bits and stirrups. It seems to have been a culture dominated by a warrior elite.
You told me about one specific burial that just creates such an amazing mental image. The boat coffin from Kerala.
Ah, yes, at Veer. They found a terracotta sarcophagus, a coffin that was shaped like a boat, a canoe.
That's not just a random design choice. That's a whole cosmology right there.
It has to be. It implies a belief that the journey to the afterlife involves crossing water, that the soul is a passenger on a ferry to the land of the dead. It's a belief we see in so many cultures around the world, the Greeks and the river Styx, the Egyptians, and the solar bark. And here it is in Iron Age South India, shaped by their maritime landscape.
So they're not just building tombs for the dead. They're looking at the stars, too. The prehistoric observatories.
This is some of the most exciting new research. At places like Nalaskal in Karnataka, there are complex arrangements of standing stones. They aren't tombs, but for a long time, nobody knew what they were for.
Until someone looked at them during the solstice.
Exactly. Researchers realized that certain stones were aligned with incredible precision to mark the position of the sunrise on the winter and summer solstices and the equinoxes.
Their calendar. A giant stone calendar.
They're astronomical instruments. By watching how the sun and shadows interacted with these stones, they could track the year. They could know exactly when to plant, when to harvest. It's sophisticated, applied science. Stone and sky in perfect harmony.
It's just amazing. And these weren't poor, struggling people. We have to mention Adichanallur in Tamil Nadu.
Adichanallur is a vast burial ground, and among the iron weapons and pottery, excavators found incredible treasures, including gold diadems.
Like a crown.
Thin, delicate bands of gold foil that would have been worn on the forehead. This is evidence of royalty, of powerful chiefs with access to incredible wealth and long-distance trade networks.
Okay. We've gone from a simple quartzite chopper to gold crowns and solar observatories. It's an incredible journey. But before we wrap up, we have to give everyone the secret decoder rim for Indian archaeology.
Ah, yes. The pottery code.
Because pottery is everywhere, and it changes over time, so it helps archaeologists date the sites they're digging.
It's the absolute backbone of archaeological dating. So here's the quick and dirty guide. If you're on a dig in India, what do these sherds mean?
Let's do a rapid-fire round. First up, ochre-colored pottery. OCP.
Think Chalcolithic. Think copper hoards.
Yeah.
It's usually found in the north. It's quite thick and often crumbly, with a reddish-orange slip that can rub off on your fingers.
Okay. OCP is early copper, guys. Next, black and red ware.
This is the big one. The longest-lasting style. It's exactly what it sounds like. Red on the outside, black on the inside. It's made using a special firing technique. You find it from the Chalcolithic all the way through the megalithic period. It's the default pottery for a huge chunk of Indian prehistory.
Right, so black and red is the old, reliable. Then something new shows up in the Iron Age North.
Yeah.
Tainted gray ware, PGW.
Very distinctive. This is a high-quality, fine-grained gray pottery, and it's painted with black geometric designs, dots, lines, swirls, swastikas. This is the signature pottery of the early Iron Age in the Ganges Valley, the culture often associated with the world of the Mahabharata.
And finally, things get fancy. Northern black polished ware, NBPW.
This is luxury tableware. It has this incredible lustrous, mirror-like black finish. It's almost metallic. This appears later, around the 6th century BC, with the rise of cities, states, and empires like the Mauryans. If you find NBPW, you're firmly in the historical period.
Yes. Crumbly OCP, common black and red, pattern PGW, and shiny NBPW. Got it.
You're hired.
You know, when you lay it all out like that, it's just a staggering story of human ingenuity. We started this conversation with simple, rough quartzite hand axe, and we've ended with solar observatories and gold diadems.
It really is. We sat in that dentist's chair in Mehrgar. We huddled in the pits of Burzahom. We saw the rise of inequality in those Chalcolithic graves.
What really strikes me is how it's not a story of clean breaks. It's not like the Stone Age people just disappeared and the Metal Age people showed up. It feels much more layered.
That is perhaps the key feature of the Indian story. It's a story of accumulation, not replacement. Old ideas and technologies exist alongside new ones. That shrine at Baghor is a perfect example, a Paleolithic idea that may still be alive today. The reverence for cattle that we see in the ash mounds is still a central part of life for many. It's a deep, deep continuity.
And there's a final thought, a kind of warning
Yeah.
that comes from the geology of all this. You mentioned the Sun Valley site where Baghor is.
Yes. The Sun Valley is this incredible geological archive. You can see the different layers of sediment laid down by the river over tens of thousands of years. It's a record of climate change. You can physically see the layers from when the climate was dry and then when the monsoons came and the forests grew.
And every time that climate shifted, the people had to completely change their way of life.
Their tools had to change. The heavy hand axe was perfect for the open grasslands, but it was useless in the dense new forests, so they had to invent the microlith. When the population grew, hunting and gathering wasn't enough, so they had to invent farming.
But farming brought cavities, so they had to invent dentistry.
Exactly. Each adaptation was a response to a changing world. We are a species that survives by inventing new tools to solve new problems. But the rock record is a stark reminder that the environment we adapt to is never stable. It always changes.
And we are, right now, living through one of the most rapid and dramatic climate shifts the planet has seen.
We are. So the question that the entire archaeological record of India poses to us is a pretty simple one. The environment is changing again. Are our tools ready for what's coming next?
Wow. That really puts our modern hand axe, the smartphone, into perspective, doesn't it?
It does. You have to wonder if 10,000 years from now, someone will dig one up and try to figure out what this strange black mirror was for.
This has been an absolutely fascinating journey. Thank you for walking us through millions of years of history.
A pleasure, as always.
And for all of you listening, next time you're at the dentist, just be thankful it's not a spinning piece of flint. Keep digging deeper.